Good morning. My name is Sarah Holditch. Did you know that 36.9 million people worldwide are living with HIV? And of that 36.9 million, 1.8 million are children under 15 years old. That's almost 5,000 new infections per day per person. With new advancements in technology, we now have the ability to change a human's DNA. This leads me to the question, to what extent can genetic modification improve the health of children under 15 years old living with HIV? The solution I have come up with is genetic modification can improve the health of children 15 and under living with HIV by altering the DNA of the T cells that are susceptible to HIV. To understand why HIV is a serious disease, we must know what it is. HIV's full name is human immunodeficiency virus. This virus attacks T cells. T cells are extremely important when it comes to your immune system. It is your white blood cells. It fights diseases. When it attacks the T cells and kills them, it uses them as hosts for other cells to use as viruses, other HIV cells, or other bacteria. When HIV takes over, AIDS can develop, which is a serious disease and can cause death. Other bacteria can come in, or viruses like tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is also very deadly, and without the correct medical treatment, will cause death. As you can see in this chart, there are 36.9 million people worldwide that have HIV. Every year there are 2 million new infections and 1.2 million deaths. As you can see, in the more civilized regions with higher medical care, there are less people living with HIV. In more undeveloped regions, for example, Africa, there are almost the majority of the people with HIV. HIV is an STD, and most of the time it is contracted through bodily fluids, so intercourse is a very big. Intercourse causes a lot of the HIV infections, but for children that are at young ages, it can be transmitted through saliva, and if the mother is a carrier, can be transmitted through breast milk or during the pregnancy. The treatments that can be taken when you are young before you start breastfeeding, you can take an antiretroviral treatment, but that ranges to $23,000 since 2010. Another treatment that can be given with diagnosis after you have HIV is quality, but that can range from $143,000 to $388,000 since 2010. As you can see, there's a lot of financial struggles on the family with HIV, with children, with parents. And the lifetime expense of treating HIV in 2010 was $367,668. But the price of a genetic alteration, changing one strand of DNA to make you immune to HIV, as of 2015, was under $1,000, and in 10 years is estimated to be under $100. As you can see from this graph, over here in 2001, the price of editing a genome was over $100 million, but since 2015, it has dropped to $1,000, and it will continue to drop at a sharp incline the better our technology becomes. Another massive effect, health-wise, is the mental health of a child. According to the National Human Genome Research Institute, they conducted an experiment that had children affected with HIV, as in somebody in the family had HIV. They had children that were living with HIV, and then they had children that were not involved with HIV. And they put them together and they rated their mental health. And studies showed that kids affected by HIV and living with HIV had higher signs of depression, anxiety, conduct problems, and functional impairments. Some limitations of genetic modification are religion. For example, a lot of people believe that scientists should not be playing God by editing genetics and that people should be born the way they are. For example, the Vatican has said germline genetic engineering with a therapeutic goal in mind would itself be acceptable. This means if it is for a health reason, genetic modification should be allowed, but if it comes to something that is called designer babies, which are babies that are edited to have blue eyes, to have blonde hair, to be super attractive, that should not be allowed. That should be completely up to nature. Another limitation that people believe is unfairness. People believe that, again, with designer babies, there will be superhumans, there will be super intelligence, and people that don't have the money or the technology available in their area will just be less, or they will be off. They will not have as much opportunity as others. Another huge limitation is ethics. A lot of people believe that since genetic modification doesn't really have a lot of experience, this can cause a lot of danger for the embryonic fetuses that are being tested on. The only way that we can truly edit the genetics without any disruptions is when the baby is still a single cell. So if they don't do the genetic editing right, it can cause harm to the fetus and cause the baby to have a lot more problems in the future. But with all of these limitations aside, genetic modification to make an HIV immune child has been accomplished. This man named Heijang Gui, he used CRISPR, which is one of the most advanced and safest genetic editing tools, and he made 2 twins that are HIV immune. As of right now, they are around 7 months old and they are healthy. He says that this can be possible and that it should be accomplished because with genetic modification and the advancements to make HIV immune, we can make safer environments for our children and HIV-free future. Thank you. What are your questions?
Okay, Sarah, I have 2 questions for you. First up, what evidence did you gather that you didn't use, and why didn't you use it?
I had a lot of evidence that was newspapers because, for example, a lot of my my counterclaims or my limitations were mainly opinions of people, what their beliefs were, and that's very biased. So I had to cut a lot of the biased out and use most of the factual data that I could.
Okay, and next question. If you had more time, what additional research would you have conducted on this issue?
If I had more time, I would have done a lot more research on the children that have been HIV immune, but China has definitely tried to cover it up, and they've been watching the children grow, making sure that nothing else was edited, but they're like my main circle or focal point of this. They are the proof that I need to show that this is possible and that it can be done.